person is a manager
Mhm.
in the senior center, but for me, the way I approach it is event. So basically, they will be eating lunch,
Okay,
and
so kind of a lunch and learn experience.
not even. I'm in the hallway. They eating their
Mhm.
lunch. So what I'm thinking about is what can I connect with the customers or the seniors or anybody passing by. What kind of bits and pieces can trigger um, their interest and maybe further conversation about health of food choice, because I think
Mhm.
that will benefit them more than skincare. Skincare is good, that we talk
Mhm.
about that too. That's what passing because that's external, but the food choice is really what's internal.
Fair
That's
enough.
what
Okay.
my focus. So if you shed some lights on how to talk to
Mhm.
seniors, you know,
Fair.
about food
Uh,
choices.
so if I understand this correctly, it sounds like you're going to be in kind of like a hallway and you'll have maybe a booth there and there'll be other kind of vendors or other educators also there as well.
Correct. Not
Cool.
necessarily educator, but maybe just gift baskets or whatever.
Right. So like
That's
local farmer, local product vendor, something like that. They're all going to be there and folks are just going to be, it's like a social event around food and then they're just going to be wandering through and kind of looking over the things and ideally stopping to have conversation because that's
mhm,
where you get to
mhm.
have some influence and you get to have those more important discussions. Cool. Uh, we can talk about the format in a second, but I'm curious to know, does anyone here specifically work with or has presented to folks who are, we'll say, in a seniors center, we'll say the cutoff is like 60 plus, so like around retirement age and above. Any experience there?
I've
Janice.
um I've had um I've been at health fairs,
Mhm.
they've had different ages, and I've also spoke to seniors. And what I usually do, I have pamphlets. I have pamphlets out, one on staying well, and then different ideas. I was reaching for it, different ideas of how to stay, eating well with portion size, measuring, eating in moderation. And then I also have another pamphlet. I used to give out pamphlets because when they see the pamphlets, with the different topics, and this is one, it says healthy eating for a better you, and I get that out, and I have my information on it, but then I have different ways that they can, I have a pamphlet that I made up that they can eat well, different
Mhm.
suggestions. And it talks about portion size, because I know that, talking to seniors, they're not going to give up eating their sweets and, different things. So that they don't feel deprived, I tell them
Mhm.
to portion size and eat it in moderation. If you have it this week, maybe try not to have it next week, or but eat in moderation. And that's
Mhm.
what I've done. And I think, they've taken the pamphlets, and then when they stop and they see the pamphlets, then that's another opportunity to, that you tell them about, eating well. But then I also have a wheel that you have that asks different questions on it.
So do you get them to spin it and then whatever
Spin
question it
it.
lands on, that's the topic
Yes.
of conversation you have with them?
Yes, that's the topic. And then when they get it has a question on it. When they get the question right, I give them a prize. And,
Oh,
something
okay.
something small, something small. I went to a dollar store, found some cookbooks, healthy cookbooks, and I
Mhm.
would give that to them. And then I would also them to ask them to sign up for my, because I give out healthy tips on Mondays, and I send that to them. Yeah, but that's what I've done, and it's been
Fantastic.
very, very successful. Because when they see the information and when they see that, or when they spin the wheel, they start asking questions, in referencing, what on the question that they landed, and that's why it just opens up the door. Hmm.
Mhm. That is fantastic. I mean, Chingy, hopefully that gives you some ideas in terms of how you can connect with your audience. So it sounds like one of the obstacles you'll have to kind of figure out is how do I get people to stop and want to talk to me, especially if I'm uh, in between fancy soaps and fudge, and they're like, "Ooh, I want to go sample both of those things." Getting people to stop and have a conversation is probably the highest kind of priority before figuring out what that conversation even is like. And Janice, your idea of having a wheel there is fantastic. So that's a nice visual. It gets them to interact with you and try a thing. You can also offer some small prizes as kind of a promotional loss leader, we'll call it. Uh, if you don't have the a big spinning wheel on hand to use, my suggestion would be even if you had like an iPad, and you can go online and find kind of either a quiz website or a randomizer website where they just
Mhm.
uh, hit a button and then it brings up a topic, or hit a button and it asks the question as like you go through a quiz, and then you can just ask them, "Hey, do you know the answer to this, or would you like to have a conversation about this?" Anything like that that is engaging, that is kind of gamified and encourages people to have that conversation and start connecting with you, I think is incredibly valuable.
Make perfect sense. Thank you. Thank you, Janice. Thank you,
Yeah,
Coach Jeremy.
you're very
Hmm.
welcome. Janice, you crushed that. That sounds like exactly the
Thank
path
you.
that I would follow
Mhm.
as well. Chingy,
Thank you.
the thing I would add here is like once we'll call that kind of like your hook. This is the thing that like brings people in and encourages them to engage with you. The conversation, as Janice correctly noted, is going to be okay. Now that we have people here, what is an appealing message that I can share with them that I feel like will meet with the appropriate amount of resistance? So, as noted, Chingy, you mentioned like my in-laws eat a whole bunch of sweets, and I'm not going to pry that out of their hands. Janice also noted the same thing. It's not a message that resonates super well. It's maybe one that people are like, yeah, I realize I should, but then if I'm 70 or 80 or 90, it's like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to make that change.
Mhm.
Whereas there are maybe some topics of discussion where they may be a little bit more receptive to making some changes. So things along the lines of what would help them to live a better, higher quality of life. It's like maybe I don't need to give up candy, but maybe there are some things that I might want to add in. A conversation that's happening a lot in older populations right now are changes to dietary guidelines for protein intake. So that is something where you can share your nutrition knowledge with them, and that may be something that they understand and want to engage with a little bit more. One thing that I've noted from working with like an 80 plus, 80-year plus population, a common issue that they have is like one, they're just less hungry. As we know, kind of like the digestive process changes with aging. So hunger signaling may not be as acute. So thinking about strategies about how do we encourage people to continue to eat and how do we encourage them to enjoy higher protein options if that's the case. Another one that I think younger people don't think about that much is some proteins are a little bit challenging to eat and swallow. So if you have any dental issues, if you have any swallowing issues, is that something that this population would benefit from having working someone who is aware of those things? It doesn't just tell them eat more steak, and that's going to be fine. There may be some price sensitivity as well, and you may have some products that help with tackling all three of these things.
Sounds good. Thank you. I do have protein. It's a plant-based protein. It's already ready-made. Some is in the powder, so you definitely give me some ideas. I can bring some samples, just let them try it. And then sometime people, you're absolutely right. The director did ask us, say, well, I have diabetes. I don't need a carb, but I need more proteins. But director was like, you can order, replace it with free salad or whatever. So you're
Yeah,
definitely right. Kind of like replacement, but not deprive.
Right.
you may
Mhm.
want to have some samples of your protein like pre-mixed. It's like, hey,
Hmm.
here's one version that's made with like maybe with fruit, and then here's another version that's like a lower carb version, made with like an alternative milk. So just thinking of things that like what are common intolerances and just
Hmm.
trying to avoid those as best as you can. and give them like a little bit of, hey, when you spin the wheel and answer the question, you get to have this sample, and then that's where you start the conversation. And
Mm.
hopefully they enjoy the sample, and it's like, oh, they might be more interested in either purchasing your product or getting more information from you. As Janice also correctly mentioned, uh, the ideal outcome here often is if they don't make a sale right away, they don't buy a thing or sign up for coaching right away, which is less common. Most of the ideal outcome here looks like gathering their contact information and being able to further that conversation down the line. So asking them for an email address or a phone number and saying, hey, would you like to set up a phone call to discuss some of these things later on? Or getting their email address and being like, hey, is it okay if I send you some information about either my coaching services or my some of the products that I think may be of interest to you?
Thank you. That's a very good point. All of those are
Mhm.
very good point. Yep.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Janice. Uh,
You're
yeah, I
welcome.
mean, the last thing I'll say on that topic is that this is probably one of the least served populations in health and wellness, which is crazy when you think about kind of where our current population is and where it is going and who's going to be the largest cohort, likely with the most disposable income. It's going to be people who are 65 plus, if it isn't already now. Uh, so if you are starting to make inroads with that population, you feel compelled to work with that population, it's a pretty good place to start. So glad to see that you're already starting to connect with them, and keep us posted on how the event goes. When are you kind of setting up?
Well, I just learned it. It's next Tuesday, so I may not have a lot of time to prepare, but I can
Mhm,
kind of to know because I personally I like the idea to connect with people. I think that's the most important. The
mhm,
Genesis idea of a pamphlet, mine may not be that fancy. I probably get something, you know,
mhm,
and then the wheels, your idea of iPad, it just engage with them. That's really, to me, it's more important connect with them because they live in the senior center. They're kind of like
mhm.
in a confined. I just
Right.
need to build a good relationship with the staff. I can go back again. That's another thing. But on the other hand, of course, it's different. The way I learned that is because I have a church friend who actually go there for the Bible study. So
Mhm,
ultimately, there's a connections for all different aspect of it. Spiritual is one of the things for people living life with hope, because when they live
mhm.
life with hope, all those choices come with it.
Correct.
So, thank you.
Thank you for getting us kicked off. Any final questions or comments for Qingyi before we move on? Tara, did you have something?
No, just rejoining.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, cool. All good. Uh, Anyone else have a comment or a question that they wanted to bring to the table before we go into case studies? And for Chingy and anyone else this is your first call, first of all, welcome. And second, this is largely an open format call for today. So if you have discussions or questions that you want to ask, those are always a higher priority than case studies. We can go into those if we have a little bit of a break in discussion.
Sorry for me, I don't want to occupy the entire call. The
By
case
all
study
means,
for
please.
me, because I don't have a coaching background experience, it's kind of overwhelming, if you know
Mhm,
what I mean. It's like, what do I do with here? I don't know. I'm being more of a position being coached. So when I put myself in the coaching, it's like, man, I just saw, okay, they did a great job. But if you know what I mean.
Oh, 100%. When you're initially starting out, depending on what your experience is, so you do have the added benefit of receiving coaching and understanding what good coaching feels like. So when you're appraising those case studies, you can say, ah, yes, like I can see how they arrived at an appropriate outcome. Connecting the dots there is going to be a little bit challenging until you continue your education so get a little further down the certification, as well as gain more experience. So places like this are a pretty safe place for you to, again, experience what good coaching feels like. What are the specific mechanics of coaching? What are the questions? What are the phrases? What are the things that repeatedly come up? And then that is how you build your coaching experience uh, before you start to speak with other folks. And understand also that those first coaching interactions are not meant to look like what we would experience in a case study. If you get some of the elements that are similar there, where it's like, great, I can identify that I spent enough time kind of just warming up the conversation. I felt like I asked one or two good questions. They left feeling like they had a little bit of direction. Great. That is an excellent first intro to much of coaching. We don't expect that you will have kind of all of the flow and nuance of coaching down when you first start to work with your people, but the expectation is that you'll gather it over time by placing yourself in scenarios where you can practice. So places like this, uh, speaking with people in your community, listening for what we refer to as change talk, all of those things become examples or places for you to continue to work on your coaching skill set, either professionally or just kind of out in the wild. Uh, Actually, while we're here on this topic, if you saw my post earlier today where is this one? Here we go. If you saw my post earlier today, I had mentioned that today, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, we have our current call, so our Coaches Connect call. And then also, if you're interested in level two, where Chingy, if you're looking to improve your coaching communication specifically, so less on the technical side of coaching and the information side, but more so, what are the mechanics of coaching and how do I improve my skills there? We have our level two webinar that also coincidentally happens to be today at 1 p.m. And I thought I'd plug it here because if you show up here regularly, you are probably someone who is interested in becoming a better coach. And I cannot think of a better program than Level 2. So I'm sharing my screen here so you can see what the sign up page looks like. But if you wanted to find the sign up page, if you go into the PN Coaches Connect community and look at the events tab, you'll be able to find the information to sign up for today's 1 p.m. Eastern webinar. So just wanted to plug that for anyone who is curious. And actually, we can use that as our segue into our next conversation. Jingy, hopefully, does that kind of give you a little bit of an answer to your question in terms of here's where you're starting right now with your coaching conversations? A lot of it is very theoretical and you're just being exposed to those conversations. You're not expected to be able to handle them just yet. But again, continue going through your certification. You will get more of those case studies, and hopefully you can notice what the reference coach there is doing really well. And then if you have more questions, you can come and bring them here to this live call, or you can bring them to the level one community and ask questions there and get support from other coaches as well.
Appreciate it. Thank you. You answered my question.
Cool.
It's a
Awesome.
continual learning.
100%. Yeah, it's every scenario that you're going to enter is going to have a little bit of a different flavor, a little bit of a different element to it. And as you gain more experience, you'll gain more confidence to be able to handle those slight variations in coaching. Also, depending on if you work with a specific niche of clientele, you'll find that there tends to be a quite kind of standard conversation that evolves over time, each with like a little variation, but the more homogenous your group, so the more tight that kind of grouping of humans that you're working with. Let's say it's like, I only work with female alpaca farmers in their mid 40s. Like it's a pretty homogenous group. They have a lot of the same concerns and questions. So the conversation will be quite a little bit more narrow as opposed to I work with people from the age of 10 to 90 on eating better. That's a lot bigger of a range, and you'll need to develop different skills to navigate between those two things. I'll pull up this one here because I think it's slightly related to to what we were just talking about. So this is from Coach Annette Crampton, and they were just asking marketing outside of social media, which sounds like something, Chingy, you've already cracked the code on, and you have your first opportunity to start a little bit of, we'll call it marketing, but we can also use a softer term, which is connecting with the community. So this person says, I am over social media marketing. Uh, like when I get my cert, I don't want to have to sell myself on social media. How do you all market yourselves and get clients without social media? Uh, Coaches, I want to open this one up to you. If you share similar sentiments and you are not a fan of social media, how do you connect with your people? Tara.
Oh, I'm right in it right now. I'm taking a course that's kicking my butt. They're making me post every day and
Okay.
cold DM people. It's very hard for me, but I do
Mhm.
it. But I have this sneaking suspicion that my niche, that my target audience is not on social media. I think they're just people that are really busy executives. Like I don't actually see people scrolling memes and stuff like that at work. That's not
Mhm.
what they do. So I'm thinking about this all the time, and
That's
I
what the
actually
bathroom
took
is for.
yeah. I mean, everybody likes a funny cat, right? But I just don't
Mhm.
think they're like out there liking and following and sharing it. Those aren't the kind of people that I'm working with. So
Yeah.
I do think you have to have a social media presence. You have to curate a little bit, almost like a landing page, so people know you're a real
Mhm.
person. You get a vibe of what kind of a person you are, what you like to do, if they can relate to you as a human. Better than a website might. It's just like, oh, who is this person? Oh, they're making soup. Okay, whatever. Um, but I think at the end of the day, you might have to reach out to more people in real life. Now, this is tricky for someone like me because I'm a fully online coach. I live in the middle of nowhere. So
Mhm.
I took a marketing course that had other ideas. It was actually a really super cheap course from Exercise, etc. And it was talking about building relationships with other health practitioners in your area or in your cohort, massage therapists, physiotherapists, that sort of thing, and setting up small courses that anyone can join, and then they get to know you. And just remembering that when you put yourself out there, it might not be the people you're speaking to at that moment that will hire you, but they will talk you up and say, oh, I heard this great person and they might be perfect for you, and that sort of thing. So, like she was talking about setting up in real life, like working with online, not just online people, but like going to fairs. What are they called? Like business associations, farmers markets, things
Mhm.
like that, and just like hanging out a shingle and like demonstrating a little bit of what you do and talking to real people. I think that would take a long time, but I think if you are working in person anyway, I mean, I think it would be valuable. But anyway, social media was the question, and just to answer,
No,
it's
this
like
is
oh, it's so hard to put yourself out there. But what they were saying was you get used to it, it becomes normal, and you just get used to like you have to have something to say every single day. I've been really working hard on learning how to schedule posts out. So you take like one idea and you make it into sort of five little pieces, and then you put it on the calendar and like Meta Business. It's got a really nice little calendar so you can plan out your social media. And then you can they just start posting automatically whenever you schedule them. That's been really helpful because you don't always feel like it. I'm sure you know what I mean.
yes. I feel like that most of the time, and I think
Right?
a lot of folks, probably similar to Annette here, uh, also are in that similar place. But as Tara like very correctly points out, uh, having that kind of relationship is like it's something that we can adapt over time and help change, just like our relationships with food and exercise and all the things that we help our clients evolve their relationships with. Uh, you are correct, and I think I've said this a whole bunch of times on these types of calls, which is having some social presence is pretty necessary these days. And a social page tends to be able to be more accessible for folks because it's a platform that they're already on, as opposed to a website which functions will typically house more business related functions. So easier to maybe access scheduling and payments and list of services, whereas a social page more highlights who you are as a person and as a professional. So hopefully Annette has at least kind of like accepted that that may be some of the necessity for their business building, just because even if you are meeting people in real life, it's hard to convey fully what it is you do and make that immediate connection and have someone say, hey, I'm going to sign up and give you my credit card right away, and I want to start with you on Monday. Most of them will, if you have done your job correctly in that interaction, they will come back and take a look and see, hey, I want to know a little bit more about what you do. And they may circle for a little while, they may give you a follow, they may start to like some of your content, and then it's up to you to continue to further that relationship by reaching out and saying, hey, I noticed this is happening. I noticed you're connecting with me. Thank you. It was great to meet you. Is there anything else that I can do for you? Is there anything else that I can offer you? And continue to nurture that relationship over time. Janice, was it something you wanted to add?
Oh, I just wanted to say I do have a website and I do have a social page. On my social page, on my website, I do a blog. And from my
Okay.
blog, I link it to my social page. And part of the article comes up on the, on my social page to lead them back to my blog, that's on my website. That's on my website.
Yep.
But I also, on Thursdays, I have, I call it Temple Talk Thursdays. Sometimes I put an article up and then sometimes I'll go live. I'm like you, Tara. I do not like going live, but I force myself. And the times I cannot go live, I put it's still Temple Talk Thursdays, but I'll put up some type of article, to talk about the block,
Right.
talk about the block, so that I link them back to the block so that they can read the block, which is about, and I service women 50 plus, 50 plus who want to get healthier. And I'm a faith-based health coach. But that's the way I do it. I don't know if that's the right way, but that's the way I'm doing it.
I mean, Jez, you're doing a whole bunch, and I think most people here, myself included, would would do well from following your example there. So that's pretty solid. I honestly can't add too much more to the strategy that you have involved there. Uh, Going back to kind of and then a little bit more of our offline suggestion, Tara mentioned like connecting with local health professionals. That is something that I'm a strong advocate of,
Mhm.
specifically with the lens of when I connect with another health professional, I want to understand not only this is how I can help your people, but specifically how can I help you, the professional. And by and large, that is understanding what I am more capable of as a coach and what they are less apt to do in their business model as a physician or as a manual therapist or whatever it is that they do. The thing that they often lack is the ability to meet with someone regularly and offer them support. Their touch points tend to be measured in weeks and months, whereas mine are measured in days or hours, depending on how often we're measuring. So if they have someone in their office who is like, I see this person once a week or once every 2 weeks, I ask them to do a thing, they never do the thing, and then they don't get better. And it's starting to weigh on my soul as a doctor or as a manual therapist because it feels like I'm incapable of helping that person. It's like, great. That's like my favorite type of person to work with. Send them my way. You feel like a great uh, professional because you helped connect them with someone who can help them. They no longer are taking up space in your office, which is fantastic for you. And the next time you see them, if they've made any sort of improvement, that referring person gets to feel like, yes, this was the right path for you. I had a small hand to play in it. It feels good for me. And now you're not clogging up the system anymore, which is a win for everyone. Janice, what do you got?
I just wanted to ask Tara, now, how did she connect with the health professional? Did she email them? Did she talk to them directly, or what?
I haven't done it yet.
Oh,
I took a course
okay.
where it was suggested, and I was like, "That's a good idea," and that's as far as I got.
Okay.
Janice, what's your Instagram or your handle? How do we
My
follow you?
Okay, my it's J Marie's Health and Wellness.
Can you type that in
Feel
the chat for us?
Yeah, feel free to pop it
Okay.
in the chat box so folks
Okay.
can give you a
That's
follow
okay, right?
there.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll do.
One other thing that I'll say in terms of for folks who are hesitant to appear online, either on a social page or on a website, you just feel like that's not the step for you just yet. Uh, the other place to meet folks, it's just like, where do you currently socialize with people? And think of the last time you had an interaction with someone and said, hey, what's new with you? This is a dinner party. It's at religious gatherings. It's at funerals. It's at a whole bunch of different things. Any place where it's like someone is showing the faintest interest in you as a human is an opportunity, not for you necessarily to like make a sale, but it's an opportunity to practice telling them something that you are passionate about and something that's happening in your life. And if you're able to do that, quite often, that person may be interested and say, hey, actually, you know what? That's something I've been thinking about or something I've been wanting to just explore a little bit more. They may want to exchange information and set up something there. What's even more likely is that they likely know someone who has been having this conversation as well. My common refrain in this call is the people who you are likely to coach already either know and like you or they know people who know and like you. So uh, that is a little bit of advice for Coach Annette here. You got to put yourself out there in some regard, as Tara correctly said. Having an online presence is useful for people, especially when they want to come around and get a little bit more of a sense of the work you do and the person that you are, the professional that you are. Uh, and outside of that, being able to just let folks know, hey, this is the thing that I'm working on. It is truly one of the hardest things about building your coaching business, I will say. Uh, Most people are not consummate promoters of themselves. Uh, the people who are tend to do really well in health and fitness. The more you apparently share of your life and of yourself, uh, that is something that is rewarded in our social environment. But you need to be able to tell people about, hey, this is what I do and this is who I help, and say that proudly.
Yeah,
Anything to add there, Janice? Oh, sorry, Tara.
I oh, sorry. I'm a full-time worker in animation visual effects. And so that is the niche I'm going to try to target is people sort of in like 40 to 50 age group, very stressful jobs, very long hours,
Hmm.
and very random schedules. But I haven't quite fully launched my business, and I haven't come fully out of the of the closet of like as a personal trainer. So I do train clients,
Hmm.
but it's sort of on the down low. And
Hmm.
because I want to appear like very serious about my full-time job, which I am. But I keep running into this situation where I'm having like a drink at the fall cocktail with my visual effects professionals, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just so tired all the time, and I can barely find time to eat, and I'm barely sleeping, and I just wish I could lose this." You know, and
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm biting my tongue because I'm like, I don't want to be one of those sleazy salespeople where I'm like, I can help you with this problem. I just
Hmm.
don't think it's appropriate. So I always just listen and get as much information and think about how I come across just as a professional and a
Hmm.
good listener. And then I'm like, later, later, later. I just put a pin in it in my head. Someday maybe I'll reach out to that person, but I'll just make sure that they know me as a person and that I'm not selling
Hmm.
anything right in that moment. I don't think it's appropriate unless they're like, hey, what do you think I should do? Or, hey, don't you train other people? Like, if it doesn't
Hmm.
come up, I think it's weird to say, well, I can help you with your problem when they're not asking for a solution. What do you think?
So on this one, I would encourage you to take a slightly more forward approach. Uh, I think your initial instinct is very good. So starting with, I'm listening and I'm showing up as a friend because that's the way this interaction started. They didn't come to my booth or to my business and start telling me this problem. So right now, they are in conversation mode with colleague friend Tara. They are not in conversation with Coach Tara. Listening, asking very good questions are still part of our coaching skill set. Asking more questions about like, hey, what have you tried? Like, who have you worked with anyone before? What was your experience like? That is all something that you would do as a coach and as a person. So the overlap there is still like this is appropriate for this social interaction. I would ask, well, just FYI, I have professional experience in this space. Like, would you mind if I offered you a little bit of insight based on what you're telling me? And this tends to go over quite well. Uh, if you go straight, you're correct. If you go straight for like the sale and just be like, well, I know some things, but it's going to cost you a little bit, like that doesn't go quite as awesome and can feel a little bit sleazy. But if you're going from the idea of, I have listened, I've asked insightful questions, I want to provide a little bit more value in this interaction, part of it typically involves like, I'm not just telling you this thing because I think it's a good thing. Like I'm telling you, and I'm also letting you know that it's like I have professional experience here. So that is where my basis comes from. And then you can go on to offer them. It's like, hey, here are some resources that I can send your way. Here are some things that I find useful. I often send them in these conversations. Like, what will often happen? Someone is like explaining a thing. I see because I'm such a chronically online human being, almost something that is like certainly related to what they're talking about from someone who I think is a great online educator. And from there, I'll be like, oh, I just saw this thing about seed oils from someone who's a food scientist. And I think you would, based on like our conversation, I think you might find it interesting. So I'm just gonna, is it okay if I can like add you online and then I'll send you the thing? And then if you have any questions, like we can take it from there. And that tends to go over quite well. So it's like, I listened, I was a curious human being, I asked permission to offer additional insight or to send additional resources. If they have agreed, cool. I've demonstrated as much value as I can in this interaction. I've let someone else in the world know that this is what I do. If they have more questions, they may be open to asking me. And I've also created a pathway for future follow-up because now they expect to hear a message from me when I send them my little seed oils clip. Uh,
That's great.
yeah, I think the idea of kind of like hoping and waiting that they will ask the question or it'll come up again, uh, I truly resonate with that. And it's like it is a strategy. I just don't think it's like a great strategy from a business building perspective. Uh, it is one where it's like I understand the impulse, but we can probably push the envelope a little bit more before you start getting disinvited to colleague get-togethers. And I would encourage you to push it
Yeah.
just a little bit further.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Mhm. Cool. But hopefully that gives Annette some additional kind of insight into where you can look for people, understanding that having some online presence is useful, but also practicing having this conversation more regularly is largely how you build that initial groundswell, and just letting people know, hey, this is a thing that I do, and I'm happy to help uh, if given the opportunity. Any comments or Jinyi, your hand is up. What do you got?
What I want what I want to say is, Tara, just a little encouragement to you because nowadays, a professional before, but of course, different, everybody's situation is different. Uh, you know, I was a systems IT system engineer, have a completely different, um, careers. Even before I get out of a corporate, everybody knows Qingyi always eat healthy. That's who I am. Okay. So a lot of time the word, the impression is already there. And then my thoughts are for you when you interact with the colleagues in the whoever, let them know you are health conscious, not necessarily coaching other people. You can share, here's what I do. And then a lot of time it could be like Coach Jeremy said, a third party, if articles, and then one of the things they know, my work prior, everybody knows. And then eventually when I tell them I have a business, it's not surprising to them because everybody does
Right.
something on the side because you have a hobby. My hobby just
Yeah.
not play video games. Some people does. I'm not criticized or geocaching or whatever, right? But that's our hobby. So you kind of, in a sense, let people aware of not necessarily what you're going to make money of them, but they need to know who you are. And then I will send like I do exercise because of our age. Well, I don't know how you're much younger than me. I will have a
Almost
mobility
60, buddy.
exercise, right? I will send hey, I send you the link. They say, oh, I don't have a time. I said, don't worry about it. I have this. That's what I do every day. Is can I send it to you? So if somebody you have to send it to them, you have to get a contact information.
Mhm.
Right.
Make sense?
Smart.
So
That's really smart.
Yeah. And that's what I do. Usually, if somebody, when I meet somebody, I'll tell them, I'm retired and why while I'm retiring, what I'm doing as being retired, and then I'm a health coach. And then they'll ask me a question, what is a health coach? And I mean, the conversation goes on like that. I tell them what a health coach is, with no pressure, nothing like that. Just tell them what it is and what I do. And and if they, if you're interested, like Jeremy said, yeah, sometimes I have a car and sometimes I don't. But then yeah. But I do tell them I am a health coach, and they usually ask, "What is a health coach?" But I'm usually around a lot of people, because I go to church, and they, I've announced in the church that I am a health coach, so people come up, from all walks of life, asking me different questions, and they know that I'm healthy because I'm a survivor. I'm a breast cancer survivor. They know that, and I lost 100 pounds, and so they want to know how did I do that, and the conversation just goes on from there. And that's how I put myself out there.
Yep. And sometimes it's just about starting that conversation.
Right. Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, folks. Any final comments or questions well, I mean, Coach Annette's not here, and hopefully they see this in the future. But any final comments before we move on?
Now, Jeremy, am I doing it wrong? Uh,
Doing what wrong?
just introducing myself, after I tell them,
Oh,
I did
no,
it.
definitely
Yeah.
not. Uh,
Okay.
the formula is going to look different for everyone, but the overarching goal is always going to be let people know what I do, provide them value in the moment, and then keep the door open for future conversation. So
Okay.
you're definitely letting them know, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do. One thing I will say uh, that I would add there a little bit is like not only who I am and what I do, it's like who I help and how I help them is like if you can get the conversation to that level, that is incredibly valuable. It's normally there's like kind of a surface level kind of starting point. So it would be let's say if you're meeting someone who is like brand new to you, like you're probably gonna do start with names. You're probably gonna let them know it's like, uh, hey, what do you do? Is probably gonna come up in conversation. That is your introductory to say if you have a primary kind of occupation, you can let them know that. But you can also, and I would encourage you at this point to also let them know, and I'm also a health coach. Chances are, unless you're an incredibly interesting person who has like two cool ass jobs, like I'm an astronaut slash health coach, no one cares that much about your primary job. No offense, IT specialists and any accountants in the room here, but health coach, that's one where everyone is interested in health. Not a lot of people understand what the role of a health coach is. You will likely get the follow-up question of what is a health coach? From there, it is now your opportunity to let people know this is why I'm a health coach. This is how I became a health coach. This is who I help with my health coaching.
Mhm.
And there's a whole bunch of spin-off conversations there. And if they're still showing even mild interest at this point, you can let them know, hey, if you ever need services like this is how you connect with me. There's also a pretty strong possibility that they may mention, it's like, here's how I am currently eating. Here's what exercise looks like in my life. Here are some of the health behaviors that I'm either working on or struggling with. And you
Mhm.
have the opportunity to let them know, hey, you're doing fantastic, and give them some praise and affirmation, which typically feels good and leaves a good memory in their mind. Or you can start to ask more curious questions and look for ways where, hey, how can I potentially support this person? Uh, and again leaves a good or leaves a good impression in their mind because you were a good listener, you were interested in them as a person, you potentially offered them some pathways to support, including like free resources or things that you find interesting, and all of that is what an A plus interaction here looks like. If you get to a point where exchanging information happens and contact information, that's great. If not,
Mhm.
you've at least put out there in the world that one more person knows your name, what you do, and who you help. And if they have those people in their world who need that, you are probably much higher on the list for that person than you previously were. Hey, Martha, I saw you just pop in. Anything to add before we kind of move on.
No, I think that is a very common question to have at the beginning of the coaching journey.
Mhm.
I think just be true to whatever you feel like you are bringing into the coaching scenario and then explain it from there, like being as honest as you can. That would be my go-to tip. I think
Mhm.
it's very important to show up just as you are. And I think the certifications are useful. But I think it's more useful for the coach to be a little bit more, secure,
Mhm.
and feel a little bit more backed up by those certifications, excuse me. But I think the client just they're looking for connection, and they really need the connection. Yeah, so
Fair. Yeah, I would say by and large, it's like if I'm speaking to another coach, I might name drop some of my credentials. If I'm speaking to a person who doesn't have any sort of coaching background or idea, then I tend to keep that in my back pocket because it's not really helpful or harmful. It's more a point of confusion. And I'm not here to promote, I mean, in this call, I'm here to promote precision nutrition, but out in the wild, I'm my own guy.
exactly. Usually, when
Exactly.
you say whatever, like the main things, they're not looking for a title. They're looking for a person who
A
can help
person
you,
and a
right?
solution.
And a
Yes.
solution. Yes.
Cool. Here, let's move on to uh, our next case study. Let me see. Oh, actually, this one might be a little bit long for uh, what we're looking for today. Oh, well, it looks like I didn't save that one, but I can give you the rundown for it. So we'll stop sharing here. So there was another case study that popped up in our coaches community recently, and I believe it was Coach Abhishek Munian who was asking the question around uh, working with a client who is trying to quit vaping, and they were curious to know, is this within their scope of practice, and is there another professional whose scope this would include? So curious to know if anyone here, I'm not going to ask you if you vape directly or you're a smoker, but uh, what are your thoughts? If you were working with a client in that scenario, is that something that you feel needs an immediate referral plus continue to work together, or is that something that you feel is within your scope?
Can I chime in? I
Please.
don't have, first of all, my claim is I don't have any experience of anything about smoking and vaping, but I remember, well, I lost my husband last year, but we married about 33 years. My mother-in-law, when we first got married, my husband was trying to quit smoking several times. The way he got hooked on smoking is because his mom was smoking when he was teenager. So he started smoking by the time we got married. He already smoked well, close to 20, no, at least 15 years, I think, at the time. No, not quite 15, but over 10 years. But mom quit a long time ago. So mom gave me a good advice is because I know my husband want to quit. She said, don't nagging
Mm,
because the person know he wanted to stop it. So you just don't nagging. But a lot of time over there, interesting is my husband will use a patch or use those. With vaping, my first impression to me is a chemical induced to harm your organs. And then I don't know if it's approach right or wrong. It's not necessary. I guess coaching can help them. It's a do they understand the harmfulness to your organ? If they do, that's the reason they wanted to do is maybe come up with a solution how to suppress the desire or I don't know. To me, it's similar to quitting smoking. That's my
you're
thought.
correct. Yeah, I would say so. There's actually a couple of interesting things that you brought up there. Sorry, and I'm not a smoker. I just have a little bit of a cough today. Uh, the idea of how do we support someone who is looking to change behavior, whether that is uh, we'll say we won't use the word addictive behavior here because there's scope of practice there depending on what that addiction is. Uh, Versus we'll say a harmful behavior because that can span a whole bunch of more things. The commonality there that I believe that you said your mother-in-law correctly identified is that nagging is not a useful coaching strategy. So whether that is getting someone to change their eating behaviors or exercise behaviors, an addictive or a harmful behavior here, uh, the strategy based on nagging and like uh, primarily a negative reinforcement from an external source is probably not going to be a good one. So already, Chingy, your coaching instincts are in the right place there, at least as it comes to that level of experience. Uh, Moving the question into kind of addiction and scope, this is a place where uh, now there's like a little bit of a gray area. And if coaches are immediately like vaping, I'm not a vape coach, therefore I'm going to refer out. I would put a little bit of a question mark on that one. And I think you can certainly, I would encourage anyone to refer out if they're not comfortable with any circumstance. But ask yourself, is there room for me to continue to support this one in a co-management space? So for smoking and smoking cessation, which will put vaping and smoking in the same place here, they're essentially going to be just various levels of each other, and we don't really know. I don't think we have the full data yet to say which one is more harmful or if there are specific internal kind of damages that are related to more one than the other. But we will say smoking cessation, physicians, pharmacists, nurses probably are more ideal professionals to work with that as the primary care person because uh, there's a pharmacy related issue there. So the idea that nicotine is an addicting substance. So that is what I would say, like starts to remove it from our sphere of scope or our scope of practice. In that regard, I would still be encouraged to continue to support that person. And I can just be a check-in point where it's like, hey, how is that work going? Definitely not a nagging type of conversation, letting them know that this is related to the work we're doing, especially if we're trying to improve our health and fitness. Uh, we know that it will potentially have some influence on it, and it may make some of our other decision making more challenging. Like I would expect that someone who is making that major life transition from an addicting substance is probably going to have a little bit more challenges in terms of making better food and exercise decisions. They may find that their sleep is a little bit more challenged. They may find that other behaviors start to be subtly impacted, and that is where my support still becomes invaluable. So while I may not be helping them guide like the actual plan for cessation, getting them to have a conversation with the right professional is excellent support. Continuing my support with them to ensure that other behaviors aren't minimally impacted, we'll say, and then giving them a place to check in and continue to share their progress in between meeting with their primary professional here. Uh, any additional thoughts or comments before we sign off for today?
One question. Now,
Please.
would out of the scope be like if I talk about triggers, what
Mhm.
triggers the person, would that be more for the therapist or the physician? Could I talk about what triggered is that within my scope or is that out of my scope?
That is likely a behavioral conversation that is still, I would say, is useful for us to have as professionals, just to understand, like, okay, how are maybe some of the things that we're primarily working on? It's like,
Mhm.
man, I really like lighting up a cigarette after I work out. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, which forms of exercise is this always true? In what scenarios, in what environments? Those are still conversations that we can certainly like be empowered to have. Uh, and we don't need to necessarily go into kind of like the deeper etiology of like where does this come from
Right.
for this person. Uh, but yeah, support in that world, I think, yeah, it looks a little bit more gray than we immediately need to refer out. Typically, people will always do better when they have more support. So if you can remain in contact and continue to do the work that you were previously doing, I would encourage that. Uh, and then, yeah, always honor that inner voice of if I'm unsure, if this crosses a specific line, it is better to hedge and open the conversation to specific referral, or at least help that person with their search to be like, hey, which professional can help you the most, or what services or what resources would be the most appropriate for you here. So we're not taking on undue burden on ourselves that we maybe not completely prepared for or may potentially be out of our scope. Cool. That brings us right up to the hour. I want to thank you folks for your participation. Chingy, thank you for jumping in and stimulating our conversation. That was really good. And we want to hear about how your health fair / senior center kind of day out goes. All right. Hope to see you next week.
Yes.
Take care again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Couch
Bye.
Jeremy.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
See you